Let's talk about fraud, and then let's talk about viewability. With respect to fraud, we actually don't use the term fraud at comScore. We use
why not?
Well, I'm going to say why not.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would be silly me to start that way, right?
Fine. That was the journalist in me doing the quick follow-up.
We use the term non-human traffic, and very simple, a two-part answer. One is because we endeavor to report on traffic. So unlike some companies that are in the fraud measurement business, we're actually not in the fraud measurement business, we're in the traffic measurement business. The other thing is that we endeavor to identify and remove all of the non-human traffic, some of which isn't fraudulent. Bots and spiders and crawlers. Fraud, you know, it's a sort of digital research term, but you know, it's also a legal term. And fraud implies an intent to defraud. So we're not making a value judgment on the intent of the source of the traffic when we identify traffic as non-human and remove it for our reported estimates. So we use the term non-human traffic. You know, I will also tell you that we endeavor to be good corporate citizens with respect to the industry and the IAB, and we follow, for the most part, standards and definitions set by the IAB. We're on the IAB's TOGI, Traffic of Good Intent Task Force. My colleague Brian Pugh, who deserves to get his name mentioned, he's one of those guys that mostly, you know, stays in corporate headquarters and does all the work while people like me come out and talk to people like you. But Brian is our representative on that group. He and his team at comScore oversee the identification and detection and removal of the non-human traffic. So we support the IAB's definition. With respect to viewability, you know, Cheryl talked about OTS, opportunity to see. We all know that the MRC and the IAB sort of together have defined viewability in the standards that are out. For display, it's 50% of the pixels are on screen for at least 1 continuous second, and for video, it's 2 continuous seconds. So that's the definition of viewability that we use in our product.
I was going to say you're good with that.
Sure, absolutely.
You've rubber stamped, and that's now part of the reporting you provide.
Absolutely, yes,
okay.
Yes.
Good. So let's talk about some of the other reporting and some initials that, again, for folks here in the room and probably at least half the audience watching online, they'll know about. But since, again, we've got a lot of new folks from many sides now swarming and deservedly so, putting a lot of attention on this. Tell us about your VCE product, what it stands for, and some of the differences between that and 3 other initials that might be out there from another well-known vendor.
Sure. VCE stands for Validated Campaign Essentials. We offered a product called Campaign Essentials. It actually launched in 2010. And what it was, and so typically audience measurement measures vehicles, media audiences. Media metrics, as people know, measures, you know, site audiences, et cetera. Campaign Essentials was designed to measure campaign audiences, to track and report on gross impressions, reach, frequency, and demography of campaigns. I think we all know that over the last 5-6 years, the issue of ad verification or ad validation has become very important in digital. It means a couple of things. It means viewability, but it also means freedom from fraud or elimination of non-human traffic, brand safety, and in geographic delivery. So there's sort of 2 modules of VCE, Validated Campaign Essentials. One module is the audience part, which is the traditional campaign metric part, reach, frequency, GRPs by demography. And the other module is the ad verification part, or the ad validation part, hence the V in VCE. I am, as a rule, disinclined to chat about the competition in a public forum because, you know, let them get their own slot.
No, you're a good citizen. Yeah.
But sure, my understanding.
There are some key differences, and there are a lot of publishers who are hearing from, let's say, Kellogg's, and then let's say Unilever, and their agencies, and saying we're wanting to do this here. So, you know, there's a classic publisher argument of do I take both? Do I have my own? Geez, there's some differences here. So, help some publishers out there maybe make the case for why. VCE needs to be recognized.
Sure, absolutely. So a couple of things. One is that the V part of VCE. We tend to believe that ad verification, ad validation is an important part of the process, that you need to understand I'll make it very simple. You need to understand viewability and in-target delivery from the same source. If one source tells you 80% of my ads were in target and another source tells you 80% of my impressions were in target, you don't know how many of your impressions, 80% of my impressions were in view. Right. You don't know how many of your impressions were in view to your target. So one of the, the notion of VCE being an end-to-end solution and having both components is very important, because we believe, and I think it's pretty clear, that the only way to really understand how your campaign is performing is to get the viewability and other verification metrics from the same source that's giving you the audience counting. The other thing is, so we all know, so look, I'll just come out and say it, right? We all know that the other company is very heavily dependent on one particular source for their demography. And it's Facebook, and I love Facebook. I'm on there all the time. I'm a fan of Facebook as a consumer and as a marketer and a digital, as a digital native. So that leads people to sort of come back to comScore and say, so if Facebook is their guy, who's your guy? Our guy is diversity. Our guy is plethora, okay? Abundance. We believe that the more sources you have that are integrated into the disposition of demography, the better, the more accurate, and the fairer you can be in creating a disposition on exactly who's seeing those ads. Every source has bias. Don't kid yourself. Every source has bias. And it's fundamental that the best way to eliminate bias, or I should say a good way to eliminate bias, a very good way, is diversification of sources.
So let's continue that a little bit and pick up on something we talked about with Cheryl, and that's the apples to apples with linear television.
Yeah, sure.
Today.
Let's talk about that.
So you mentioned there's another pretty well-known acronym in television buyers, VPVH,
yep.
the viewers per viewing household, that is has been the currency for quantifying composition of women 25 to 54 for 40 plus years. Do you help us with the apples to apples as this starts to get into as VCE expands, what are the plans for VCE expanding into television and maybe encroaching on someone else's turf a little bit? Or is the goal here to, not have a winner-take-all setup like we've had in television for a little while now? I'd say fair to say. And, is the argument that the industry should be fine with a two-state game? I used to talk when I was a TV buyer that we would complain all the time about geez, if I was buying Kids 6 to 11 for Sega in 1993, and if it rained outside, then suddenly the ratings spiked. It seemed, just because the sample size was challenging back then. But you could argue the methodology over cocktails all you want, but at least everybody danced to the same song. Yeah. Are we going to be dancing to two tracks?
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let me tell you. I'm a quasi-expert on this topic, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I worked at Arbitron for a long time, okay?
Another well-known place, yeah.
I worked at Arbitron when we won the radio ratings battle and our competitor Birch went out of business. And there was just one radio rating service. So I've won that battle. Mm-hmm. I've worked at Arbitron when Arbitron went out of the TV ratings business and there was one local TV measurement service. So I've lost that battle. So I am acutely aware of the dynamic that we're all sort of become accustomed to of one service. Here's the thing. Number one, if there are two services and one of them goes away, the service left hasn't all of a sudden become extremely right. It's just become the only place I can look, okay? The other thing is the economies, look, let's face it, the economies in digital, in all sorts of market spaces, are very different than the economies out here in the physical world. And what we knew, look, when I was at Arbitron, what we knew is that there was about enough money in the ratings business for a service and a half. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, in the TV business, us and Nielsen at the time were both getting about 3/4 of the business we needed to be profitable. There was money for a service and a half. And
what year are we talking about?
92.
Okay.
92. And it was a war of attrition. In the digital space, the economies of scale are very different. It doesn't cost you tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to mount a national.
A little cheaper than diaries today, right?
Yeah, the economies are different, and there is frankly no. I mean, look, you talk about comScore and Nielsen. There are, you and I together, we could probably in 30 seconds rattle off 10 other audience measurement companies. Yeah. The market has perhaps come to believe that it's very tidy when everybody but one guy goes out of business, and let's not kid ourselves, that's the dynamic we've seen. It's not going to happen in digital. Everyone but one guy is not going to be forced out of business because the economies are different and there's different niches that people can occupy.
So let's draw a parallel then and get into something, pivot into something we didn't talk about in our prep, if that's all right. Speaking of one guy in a certain industry, so Google at their client advisory board yesterday, Neil Mohan announced some new measurements leveraging both of your services. So let's play off that. There definitely will be more than one guy because the ecosystem is different. How has the implementation of VCE getting into a lot of the programmatic pipes, both buying and selling, how's that been progressing, and how have you seen that evolve in terms of getting standardized and having it be just a standard currency, and how transactions occur as programmatic now goes past 30% probably this year in display?
Yeah, it's progressing extremely well. What I would probably say, to be very honest here, is that it's better. It would be better if you could ask me this question after the summer, because the Google double-click implementation should be complete August. So,
I figured that was a little announcement before the switch gets flipped. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of building and work that has to get done between the announcement and the time that it launches. But yeah, that'll be in place. We're going to be, we did a deal with Yahoo. We'll be in Yahoo's interface. So, like I say, it would be much tidier to ask me that question in 3 months, and then we could look back and say it's going great. We're meeting the needs of advertisers and publishers. There's seamless integration. You can go to any of the major ad service that you want to work with and automatically get VCE reporting, which is third-party reporting, back to you. One thing I will mention is that I use the phrase third-party reporting, and that's still important in our marketplace. And frankly, I think Google knows that, and that's why Google, who has been reporting on campaign delivery themselves
on their own, methodology originally, right?
Yeah,
or still today live, right? Yeah.
They've come to understand and appreciate that the marketplace demands third-party measurement, and there's a healthy business for that, and that's a big part of why we've had so much progress with VCE in integrating into programmatic platforms.